Are you forced to get Genie Plus to enjoy your next Walt Disney World vacation? Let's discuss. Welcome to Princess and Scoundrel, where we take you along our scrappily ever after, from Fantasyland to Tatooine and everything in between. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Steven.
And today we're talking about Genie Plus. Do you need to buy it for your next trip?
I think before we talk about Genie Plus, we should talk about Fastpass.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love Fastpass, man. Okay, so what was Fastpass? It was a free service for Disney guests where you got to reserve 3 rides each day of your Disney trip in advance. It was completely free. It was amazing, and I miss it so much. And then Fastpass was around for a long time. In 2019, at the D23 Expo, Genie was announced. And when Genie was announced, it was supposed to be this basically itinerary schedule optimization tool for Disney guests that would help you plan your perfect Disney day. It was Genie granting your wish for the perfect Disney day. And it was supposed to help you book like your dining reservations and your Fastpass reservations.
And there were third-party apps that did very similar to what Genie was going or proposing to do, right?
Right, yeah. It wouldn't book the stuff for you, but it would optimize your day.
Yes, because you would tell it what rides you wanted to ride. It would look at wait times based off of the time of year or basically the crowd levels.
Right, or people reporting what the wait times were.
Yeah, so and you were getting accurate, like from when you started waiting in line to when you actually got on the ride.
Right.
Which was sometimes differed from what Disney put on their wait times.
Yeah. Yeah, it is in Disney's best interest to move you through that park and disperse people throughout the park.
Yeah. And I think that was the difference between the third-party apps and what Genie was kind of proposing. The third-party apps, they were more to get you to the guests to have the most optimized day,
right,
to be able to do everything that they wanted to do most efficiently.
Right.
Whereas Disney's time management was more of what was best for the guest, but also like to be able to move people throughout the parks.
Like and optimizing their systems.
Their systems.
Yeah, that's fair. But Genie didn't come to fruition in the way that everybody anticipated and how they announced it, because 2020 happened. The parks closed. And when the parks reopened, there was no Fastpass anymore. There was nothing. There was no Genie, no Fastpass. Nothing existed. If you wanted to ride a ride, you got in the standby line.
Now, the standby lines weren't that bad because capacity was a lot lower during those times.
Right. They had it capped. They used to tell us how much it was capped to. It was like 25, 30% maybe in the beginning. And then eventually they just stopped telling us what the cap was. And we don't know what it is now, if there's a cap. But yeah, because it was lower crowds, it was lower waits too. And because they weren't having to process 2 lines with what used to be Fastpass line, or we'll call it a priority or whatever, and then the standby line, there was just 1 line. So everybody got through it. You got on the ride. You got in line and you got on the ride in that order.
It was a fair share. Everybody, you had to just wait in line.
Just waited in line. And it really wasn't bad. We went a few times.
Now, at the same time, they did implement virtual queues.
They did do that.
For Rise of Resistance.
Rise of Resistance, and then Remy's Ratatouille Adventure.
Did Mickey's Runaway Railway have that?
No, that one never had a virtual queue. But as of right now, well, when this episode comes out, there will no longer be virtual queues used at Disney World. Any of the rides that did use it have converted to standby lines. Doesn't mean they won't bring it back, but
yeah. I think it was pretty interesting, the virtual queue, although it did seem unfair at some points because you had to wake up at the crack of dawn to try to get
7 a.m. on your vacation.
Yeah. Just to, well, I mean, especially when they first implemented it on Rise, you had to be inside the park
at 7 a.m.
So there was crowds and crowds of people trying to get in the park to make sure they were
And then everybody, this is before pandemic. And then we're all like huddled together. We went, it was like January, I think. We had like our 6-month-old. It was freezing outside, like raining. Yeah. And we're out there 7 a.m., like huddled in this mass of people trying to get a boarding pass. Yeah. We did. We were very lucky in that we got one. But different times, man.
Yeah.
Very different times.
So the parks closed down, and then they announced Genie Plus.
Yes.
And that's when we found out that it's going to be a paid FastPass system.
Yeah. So FastPass was thrown out the window. They renamed everything, literally. Like, it's no longer called the FastPass lane. It's called Lightning Lane. It's no longer called FastPasses. It's Genie Plus, I guess, or your Lightning Lane return time.
Yeah. Well, it's a function. Lightning Lane is a function within Genie Plus, because Genie Plus is a
right.
bundle of...
It's a bundle of things. So you've got like audio tails and like AR filters, I think is what they're basically like Snapchat filters in different parts of the parks. But yeah, the Lightning Lane is a subset of the Genie Plus offering. But yeah, it's essentially a paid replacement for FastPass, except you do one at a time and you don't get to pick your return time. You just get the next available time.
And you don't get those top tier rides.
You don't get those top tier rides. Those are completely separate. So for Genie Plus, you have the ability to book return times for most of the rides, most of the attractions, let's say. The top 2 rides at each park are completely separate from Genie Plus. And they're, I think, just called like individual Lightning Lane purchases. There's not like a really good, clean, flushed out name for it. But essentially, if you want to ride the top 2 rides at each park, you have to pay to ride that one single ride. So if you want to go ride Rise of Resistance, it's usually around $15 per person to ride that ride.
See, this is where I think... So first, I want to say, from the business side of it, I understand.
Yeah.
Not that I like it. I understand why Disney implemented this purchase of a FastPass.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to make profit from closing down for as long as they did, because the parks are their, where they make a majority of their profit. So yeah. they lost. They were at a loss. This is how they were recouping.
And it was a good time to do it, right? It was like a nice cut.
Yes.
But other parks,
it was not a nice cut. It was a business smart cut, a business wise cut.
Well, I mean, like, it was a cut in that the parks closed, and so they had the ability, like, there was a pause.
Yeah.
So they had the ability to start something new. But other parks do it. Universal has Express Pass that guests have to pay for. So it was one of those things that was like, man, you don't have to pay for FastPass? That's amazing. So I think we all expected it to happen, but it's very different than what we expected.
I think the big drawback is it isn't 3 rides like the FastPass was. It's just 1. And then with the top tier rides, those are additional costs. I don't, in my thinking, I don't think they intended this to be phases of Genie. I think Genie was initially set up to be this itinerary planning program.
Yeah.
And they were going to somehow implement the fast passes into it.
Mm-hmm.
When, they took the opportunity, when they saw that, they needed to make these changes, because Genie Plus doesn't feel like the naming convention, or in the Genie Plus and then the individuals, there's not a cutesy Disney naming convention.
It's not cohesive. It doesn't flow. There's Genie, which is free. There's Genie Plus, because we just put pluses on things now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's the trend. And then individual Lightning Lane purchases.
But the crazy thing is Genie Plus and the individual Lightning Lanes don't really integrate into Genie, into your day.
Not so well, no. So I don't know if we talked about what Genie is, but Genie's just a free tool now. It doesn't book FastPass or dining or anything. It's just you put in, here are the things that I like to do. Here are the attractions that I want to experience. This is the park I'm going to be at. Optimize my day. And it optimizes it, but it does it not necessarily to optimize your day. It gives you a schedule. It tells you what to do. But it would put things, when we experienced it, it would put things on there that we didn't say we wanted to do. It would say, like, go ride Hall of Presidents. I was like, I'm good. I'm okay.
Well, because
I don't want to do that
they're
right
putting
now.
all of their attractions.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you didn't want to go to, there's certain attractions you don't want to go to. You just want to avoid, or you just don't want to visit on that.
Sorry, small world.
Yeah. You don't want to go on that
Yeah.
time. So you don't want to include those, but it just wants to include it because that's the lowest wait time.
Right. Or it was weird because at one point I remember looking at it and it said, I forget what the ride was, maybe Winnie the Pooh. It was like, you should go ride Winnie the Pooh. It's at the highest wait time of the day. And I was like, why should I ride that then? Like, why don't I go do something else and come back and enjoy Winnie the Pooh when I don't have to wait with our toddler for 45 minutes? It's the Genie part of it, the optimization, I think still needs some work. It was very unoptimized. I'll say that. But then, yes, you have Genie Plus on top of it, which the naming, it seems like an afterthought, right? But it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't integrate back into Genie. And then you have these individual ones, which again, doesn't integrate back into Genie. And so yes, we understand why it came at the time that it did, because it was not good timing. None of the last 2 years have been good timing, but it was a good time for them to make that jump. But as a travel agent, it is very difficult to make that transition of being able to help people plan their trips 60 days or book our own trips or plan our own trips 60 days out if you're staying on site versus the day of. Because with Genie Plus, you don't get to pre-plan the 60 days out like you used to with FastPass. You're making those decisions that day. So for me as a planner, just by nature, like I love a plan. I love a schedule. I love knowing what I'm going to do at any given time. I don't get that anymore. And I think that was really jarring for when we tried it. You're a lot more spontaneous and just like, just go where the wind blows.
Well, I think one of the things nice about the FastPass is you were guaranteed those 3 rides.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of say, if I don't ride anything my entire trip, or not the entire trip, but that day, if I don't ride anything else other than these 3 rides, you were good.
You're good.
So, but you could pick the time of day that you wanted to do it.
Yes.
And you had the flexibility of being able to schedule it or reschedule it if you needed to.
Yes. So those are my big gripes with the current Genie Plus program is, one, you can't book it ahead. You can only do it that day. Resort guests do get a little bit of an advantage in that you can start booking at 7 a.m., whereas everybody else books when that park opens. But that's really not much time to like go in and then plan the rest of your day. But you don't get to pick when you ride that ride. When you book that first lightning lane, you're at the mercy of the app. You only get the next available time. And that was strange for me. I was not expecting that. I thought you got to pick your return time based on the videos and the research we had done beforehand. So I was kind of thrown by that because we used to say like, okay, we're going to book our fast passes, but we have dining reservations at this time. Like we're going to go do a lunch or we're going to go do a breakfast. So we'll book our fast passes afterwards. We usually go back to the hotel and let the kids rest, or really what happens is we rest. And so we would book our fast passes after that time. With Genie Plus, you get what you get. And so when we used it, our son really wanted to ride Slinky Dog Dash. We were going to Hollywood Studios. We're up at 7 a.m. to book Slinky Dog Dash. And 7 a.m. hits, I refresh. Slinky Dog shows a 9:15 return time. I'm like, perfect. We're starting off the day good. We've got it. I click on it. And when I click on the 9:15, the next screen loads and it says, your return time is 2:30 to 3:30. I said, wait, what? That's not right. I must have clicked on the wrong one. So I was like, that's not right. I go back, and now instead of 9:15 or 2:30, it's like 5:30. And this is all within 7 a.m. It wasn't even 7:01 yet. You don't get to pick when you come back. And if you miss it, you miss it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things where if you were to have booked that 5 o'clock, now again, you have to know the system, that you have like an 120-minute rule.
Yeah, there's a
And
whole bunch.
there's other things that you could kind of get an additional pass, but you would have to wait until 5 o'clock before you could even use your next
Before
until
you
you
do it,
before
yeah.
you have to ride that ride before you could even schedule your next one.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where then you feel like again, if it's that late in the day, you've wasted it.
Right. Because
So
wait times are low by
Yeah,
then.
so we took a different option. We went for Story Mania.
Yeah, I think so.
We went through that ride, and we scheduled the next one to, I think it was Swirling Saucer, right?
I think so, yeah.
And it was a couple hours between when we rode Toy Story Mania to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to figure out, and I think that's where you're kind of aimlessly waiting.
Right.
Instead of waiting in line in the queue, you're just kind of waiting outside.
And you can do other things.
And I think that's what we did. So I think we went to Galaxy's Edge.
Yep.
We got some blue milk. We went through the marketplace. And again, just waiting outside the queue until our time came to ride the ride.
Which is better. You don't want to stand in line if you don't have to.
Well, for kids.
For kids.
With kids, I mean,
yeah,
it was very nice because they weren't having to be in, real.
Like you have to stay
gripey.
in this 1 square foot.
Yeah. So it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
We just let them roam around, and then, okay, it's our time, let's go. And then we picked the next ride. And I think we went from Hollywood Studios to Magic Kingdom.
Yep.
Did some rides over there,
Mhm.
and then came back to Hollywood Studio. But
Right.
we didn't use, there was no more. I mean, there's pretty much no more Lightning Lane past 6 o'clock.
Like
'Cause
to
I think
get lightning
I think when we
lanes,
came
or
back, yeah.
they
'cause
weren't available.
They weren't available.
Yeah, because even when we were at Magic Kingdom, I think we switched from, I think we came back to Hollywood Studios at like 6 p.m. And we were trying to maybe a Slinky will open up. Maybe Millennium's Falcon will open
There's
up.
nothing.
Nothing was available.
Yeah.
And
As far as Lightning Lanes, you could go to standby and wait.
Yeah. But yeah, so we ended up doing standby for Mickey and Minnie's.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt.
It's very much at the beginning of the day type of thing.
Yes. And I think that was the other thing that was frustrating is you could sit there and refresh and try to see if you could get a lightning lane and not get anything. And so we were in Magic Kingdom, we were eating lunch and we're eating and I'm just sitting there refreshing and nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's just I just spent 15 minutes just sitting here on the app doing this while I'm mindlessly eating instead of having a plan of where we were going to go already.
Yeah.
So it's very spontaneous, but it's very you have no game plan, and that threw me.
Yeah.
Well, we still accomplished a lot.
And I think that's where the knowledge, of the parks helps, because you can know, hey, we're not going to be able to get a lightning lane until this time, so let's get in a standby line.
Right.
At the very, rope drop or as early as you can, go ahead and use that time to go get on something else. Or those wait times, this is the time if we want to go eat, we want to go do something, go do that between these. So I think it's manageable, definitely manageable with the current system. But it is hard going from a free, 3-pass system to a paid 1-pass
one
system.
at a time system. Yeah.
Or one, paying maybe up to 3 times if you were getting Rise, Minnie, Mickey and Minnie, and Lightning Lane.
And Genie Plus, yeah, because you can do up to 2 rides of the individual Lightning Lane purchases per day too. So you could spend a good chunk of your day, and which to me is just increasing the ticket prices, really.
Yeah, and well, the crazy thing too is you once you get it, you can't. There's nothing you could do, right? If you miss that pass, if you get a Rise, you can only ride it once. Right?
Yeah, you can only ride each ride once of the individual Lightning Lane purchases.
I'm saying Rise because that's kind of the
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail right now. If you're going to go ride the biggest ride there is, it's going to be
Rise of the Resistance.
Rise.
Which,
or,
Flight of Passage.
Flight of Passage over it.
But that was the other thing is I got so caught up in this whole Slinky Dog Dash debacle at 7 a.m. and I was so thrown by like, oh, we didn't get it. And then by the time I was like, let me just go grab something, it was way too late in the day. And we're like, okay, never mind. That I forgot to go purchase Rise of the Resistance for us because our son really wanted to do that too. And so it was like, okay, you guys go do that. We'll go do something else. I didn't buy it at 7 a.m. It was gone by the time we went to go look for it. I forget when it was, but it wasn't too much later.
Yeah.
You're out of luck. I mean, you can go ride the stand. You can go stand in standby, but those are long lines.
Yeah.
And so if you're really trying to optimize your day, you got to be on it. But it's not I think FastPass was a bit of a beast, and there's a really good documentary out there about it, or video about FastPass and like the business of FastPass and this monster that it became. And it was difficult to use and navigate if you weren't familiar with it.
And I think that's the thing. Again, that the video you're referring to,
it's a long video. It was like an hour and a half or something.
I think it was Defunctland. It was a fantastic. There was a lot of thought
fascinating
that went into fast passes in general. The kind of the history of it, because Disney has always had kind of a tiered system or tiered rides or whatever. And they talked about the fast pass and kind of the beast of it, and that there was people that loved it, knew the system, and knew how to work it, and they really liked it, and that's why they really liked it. Whereas like people that were novices didn't really get the advantage of it because they were just doing, the 3 rides or whatever. And I would like to see now with Genie Plus how that did it go back, where it's more fair. It's technically more fair. It just doesn't feel more fair. Or if it is, more fair to the people that pay, or less fair to, people that don't, like kind of how does it all shake out?
Right. I think it's too soon to tell, right? Because Genie Plus came out in October. And so we're only a couple months into it.
And they're already making different change, or they're making changes to, or they've done different things. Because Christmas time, it wasn't 2 rides, it was one ride.
It wasn't the top 2 rides that were individual. They took basically the second ride from each park and pulled it into Genie Plus. I think to help, like, again, disperse people throughout the parks. But FastPass system got a lot of flack for being very difficult. Genie Plus feels very difficult. And to be able to explain that to a client and say, okay, let me break down Genie Plus for you. It's like, how much time you got?
I think it's, so I would slightly disagree.
Okay.
And as far as difficult, it is difficult if you are trying to optimize completely.
That's a good point.
If you are just saying, I've paid my $15, let me scroll to see what the next ride is, and you're okay with just, this is the next ride that I'm going to ride, let me hit it, you go into line, it works the way it's intended, right?
That's fair.
But if you have no knowledge of like what you're getting on, if you're getting on 3D Muppet Vision,
don't knock Muppet Vision.
it's great, but you don't need a fast pass or lightning lane for that.
Right.
But if you don't know, then yeah, I redeemed it. I redeemed an attraction.
That's fair. I think I'm projecting my own
because most people
objectives on it. Because if it's something where you have to like snag return times and all this, I'm like, oh, it's a game, and it's a game, so that means I need to win.
Yeah.
And so it's like I need to do the most with it. And it's difficult to do that. Depending on what time of year you go, what parks you go to, it's difficult to do that. But
and
you're
see,
right.
you have knowledge. You know that these are the rides that everybody wants to ride.
Yeah.
These are the rides that I want. If you don't get those rides, or if you don't get a portion of the rides, you feel like you wasted your money, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because when we used it, we didn't ride top tier rides. Ours were all
not even top tier. We didn't ride the bigger,
of the
Slinky,
ones available for Genie
Rock and
Plus.
Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror, Smuggler's Run. These are all rides that are
included in Genie Plus.
But we weren't able to get them.
Yeah, we rode like the mid to lower tier rides, which is fine because we have 2 young kids. They don't like to do those rides, or they can't. Our youngest one can't do those rides. So we're okay with doing the smaller rides, but it's still, to me, I felt at the end of the day, it was like, I don't know if we did enough to justify
the $15.
The $15, which is just $15. Like when you're at Disney, a popcorn and a soda costs $15. But but still, it was.
But when it worked. It was nice. It was nice to be able to just get on straight on the ride.
It was. And that's, I think, the other point that we wanted to make was there are 2 lines. There is what's now called the lightning lane, which means you just zooming on up to the front of the line, and the standby line. And you love talking about this.
It's by definition, like Disney does not lie. By definition, you are on standby.
Yeah, they're not.
You are waiting for that line to go. So you are always going to wait behind, whatever priority lane they call it.
Right. And I think with the FastPass line before, they would let a few FastPass people go through, and then some standby, and then some FastPass and some standby. I think now, when we've waited in standby, it very much seems like those lightning lane people, the people that are paying to go in that lane, they're going right on through, and standby is waiting until that line is empty. I don't think that's the case all the time, but it definitely felt more like lightning lane was prioritized over standby.
Yes, I would agree.
Which, if you're paying for it, you're going to want that. But when you're not paying for that, you're like, man. And that's why, here's my soapbox. That's why I think you need to buy Genie Plus for your next trip, depending on what you want to do. If you're trying to ride as many rides as possible, or you're trying to go after, a bunch of these attractions, you kind of have to buy Genie Plus in order to experience those with less of a wait time. Now, if you're going to a park that, say you really want to do, say you're going to Hollywood Studios and you want to ride Rise of Resistance and Mickey and Minnie's, those are ones that you just purchase individually and you don't care so much about the other ones. Maybe you don't need Genie Plus and you just buy the rides. But either way, you're probably going to be spending money to ride rides on your next Disney trip.
So you're looking at it from the perspective of someone that has knowledge, that knows the parks and knows what they want and how they want it. I personally, it's a more difficult decision for me. Now, if it was the same FastPass system where it was 3, it would be a little bit more difficult for me. But as it stands now, I don't think I would opt into the lightning lane system.
Really?
Yeah, because maybe it's just to make a stand that I'm going to stand in line. Like, you're not going to get that $15 out of me because, like we said, it was nice to skip the line, but at the same time, I'm just not waiting in line. I am waiting outside the line to skip the line. So I'm still waiting,
right?
But I'm just waiting at a different area. Whereas if I just waited in line, I would eventually get through it at the same 2 hours that it takes for me to get through the line. Yeah. Because that was usually what it was. It was around 2 hours that you're, waiting for your next queue or your next lightning lane. So if you went from one ride to the next ride that you wanted to ride, 2 hours, that's being very conservative, waiting in line. But, I could save that $15 and go buy me a, pretzel or, pretzel and a drink or something.
That is very true. So I think that's kind of a good wrap on whether or not you should buy Genie Plus for your next Disney trip. Hopefully people found this helpful because it can go either way. It just depends on what your objective is and maybe if you have some certain stances that you want to take. But that brings us to this episode's Spotlight, where we highlight a small business or creator that we really like. And this one is a little bit of self-promotion, but today's Spotlight is on Carry On the Magic, which is the travel agency that I am an agent for. So if you need help with things like navigating a complicated Disney trip or any kind of trip, our goal is to make your next trip as stress-free as possible. We book Disney, Universal, cruises, all-inclusives, pretty much anywhere you want to go, we can help with it. So if you are interested in looking more into Carry On the Magic, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Carry On the Magic, and you can request me as a travel agent if you want to.
You can find new episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts or watch us on YouTube at Princess and Scoundrel. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.